Imagine this: 50,000 fans packed into a stadium, their voices echoing, their hearts pounding with anticipation. The king himself, Elvis Presley, takes the stage in his dazzling white jumpsuit. The crowd roars. But then the unimaginable happens. Elvis freezes. For 10 whole minutes, he doesn't sing. He doesn't move. He doesn't even blink into the microphone. The world holds its breath. And what those 50,000 fans decide to do next would become one of the most unforgettable moments in music history. The silence was overwhelming. A space meant for music, screaming, and dancing was now so quiet that the sound of Elvis's breath could be heard through the microphone. 50,000 people sat frozen, mirroring the man they came to see. Some fans in the front row started crying softly. Others folded their hands in prayer, unsure if something was wrong. A few brave voices called out, "We love you, Elvis." But their words were swallowed by the vast stillness of the crowd. The band didn't dare break the moment. The drummer sat with his sticks resting on the kit. The guitarist's hands hovered above the strings. All eyes were on Elvis, who stood, motionless under the burning white spotlight, beads of sweat rolling down his face. For 10 long minutes, time seemed suspended. Every single person in the stadium felt the weight of the moment. No one knew if Elvis was ill, overwhelmed, or lost in thought. But instead of panic, something else happened. The crowd began to hum quietly at first, then louder. It wasn't a song. It was a collective vibration. 50,000 people willing him back to life through sheer devotion. It was as though the fans had become his strength, holding him up when he couldn't move. The silence, which could have been terrifying, transformed into solidarity. The audience refused to let their king stand alone. At minute 10, the arena was trembling with energy. The fans weren't angry. They weren't impatient. They were united. And then finally Elvis moved. It was a warm evening in 1974, and the stadium pulsed with energy. Fans had been lining up for days, some camping overnight, just to see the king of rock and roll in person. Inside, the air vibrated with a buzz of expectation. The stage was massive, draped with lights, with Elvis's band already in place. Waiting. When the spotlight hit, the crowd erupted like a thunderstorm. Elvis Presley walked out, his iconic rhinestone-studded jumpsuit sparkling as though it carried its own light. He looked confident, strong, the embodiment of a legend. The cheers rolled over him like waves crashing against a rock. The opening chords of C.C. Rider kicked off, and Elvis's voice filled the air, deep, powerful, and unmistakably his. He moved across the stage with a grace that defied his. Years, hips swaying, hands outstretched, commanding attention from every corner of the arena. The fans screamed, fainted, cried just as they always did, but halfway through the third song, something shifted. Elvis stopped moving. He gripped the microphone stand and stared out at the sea of faces. At first, people thought it was part of the act. Maybe he was working up to a big moment, a dramatic pause. But the seconds stretched on and on. The band's instruments softened, then faded into silence. Elvis didn't signal them. He didn't look at anyone. He just stood there. 1 minute passed, then another. The roar of the audience turned into a hush, a confused silence. By the 5-minute mark, 50,000 people were sitting in complete stillness, watching the king do nothing. Security glanced nervously at each other. The band whispered behind him. No one knew what was happening, and yet no one left. No one booed. The fans waited. Would you have stayed silent with him, or shouted his name? Elvis lifted his head. Slowly, deliberately, he raised his hand and brushed his hair back. The crowd gasped. The smallest movement sent a shockwave through the stadium. Then he leaned into the microphone, his voice low and shaky, and whispered, "Thank you for waiting." The eruption of sound that followed was like thunder. People jumped from their seats, tears streaming down their faces, hands clapping, voices screaming. The king had spoken again, and that was enough. He straightened his posture, adjusted the collar of his jumpsuit, and gave a faint smile. Then he gestured to the band. The guitarist struck the first chords, and Elvis launched into "If I Can Dream." But this time, it wasn't just a song. It was a cry, a prayer, a confession. His voice soared higher than ever before, filled with raw pain and unmatched power. The crowd sang with him, their voices merging into a massive chorus that seemed to shake the very foundations of the stadium. For those in attendance, it was no longer just entertainment. It was a once-in-a-lifetime communion between a man and his people. They had given him patience. He gave them his soul. Every note was heavier, more meaningful. Every lyric seemed to cut straight into the heart of the audience. Fans wept openly, not from sadness, but from awe. The 10 minutes of silence had transformed the night into something sacred by the final verse. Elvis was drenched in sweat, trembling with emotion. As he hit the last note, the stadium exploded with cheers, louder than anything that had come before. The king had returned. The rest of the concert carried a new energy. Elvis was unstoppable. He sang with a freedom and vulnerability that fans had never seen before. Every song was infused with gratitude, as though he was giving back the love that 50,000 people had poured into him during those silent minutes. He performed classics like "Suspicious Minds" and "Can't Help Falling in Love," but each felt different, more intimate, more alive. Between songs, he spoke softly to the audience. "You don't know what you just gave me tonight. I'll never forget it." The fans roared in response, chanting his name, clapping in rhythm, refusing to let the energy die. It wasn't just a concert anymore. It was history being written in real time. When Elvis finally bowed, the crowd refused to stop cheering. For 20 minutes after he left the stage, they continued, their voices echoing into the night. People left the arena with tears in their eyes, hugging strangers, knowing they had all been part of something extraordinary. The newspapers the next day didn't just talk about the setlist or the attendance. They carried headlines like, "Elvis's 10 minutes of silence leaves fans in awe," and 50,000 voices carried the king. Those who were there would tell the story for the rest of their lives. I was there the night Elvis froze, and we brought him back. Elvis's silence proved one thing: even legends can falter. But true greatness is revealed not in perfection, but in how people stand together in those fragile moments. That night, Elvis didn't just show the world his humanity, his fans showed the world their love. If you believe Elvis will forever be the king, share this story and keep his spirit alive.